the Evolution Security Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast. This is Aaron Davis and Eric Davis, also known as the Tactical Twins. That is tongue-in-cheek, by the way, but it has stuck. Eric, remember, that's our actual band name, not our names necessarily for the show.
Aaron, I will add to that it's time for you to get me some new tracks so we can get some new bumper music.
Bro, I've got some new gear I've been messing with to get some better recordings, so and that I can get them done faster to you. So awesome. You just need to be home, bro.
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right.
True that.
Well, we are excited to have Raul Martinez on with us from Rogue Methods. We have been following him for a long time, and we've hoped to get him on for a long time. Now the stars have aligned, and we are stoked to have you on, Raul. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, guys. Thank you. Thanks again for having me. I know, like you said, things had to work their way to being here to this point. Eric and I just talked about how it was like maybe 2 years where it came up, and it was kind of just lingering, sat there, and then life gets in the way. We all travel, we all move around a lot, and then finally here we are. So I'm just as excited as you guys are. I know when we made this a set date, I put it in my phone, I wrote it down on a note, I kept looking at it every 2-3 days, making sure I'd be ready for you guys. So it's good to be here.
Man, we're humbled and honored that you're excited, because we're certainly excited, buddy. Cool.
Well, Raul, why don't you give our listeners a quick bit of your background?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, as a city kid, grew up in Chicago, which kind of explains why I'm so outdoorsy now. I didn't have the outdoor activities living in a very dense city. So now I get to enjoy that. But early on, Chicago, grew up on the South Side. Very much a culture clash in the sense of it was, and maybe now it's a little more timid to talk about like the racial wars, but there was a huge racial divide where I grew up. It was Hispanics, blacks, and whites, and we all just kind of beat each other up and then high-fived each other at school, and then came right back to it. But that's how city life was for us growing up. I remember as a kid, mom would yell out the window, and it would ping off of the other lady that was watching out the window, and it would ping off the other lady, and like the mom screaming through the windows in the 3-story high-rises, right? Real dense city environment. And it's like, hey, Raul, your mom's yelling. I'm like, oh, okay, my mom's yelling. And I'd yell back, I'll be right there. And then it just echoes down the street. That kind of like big city living, but it was a cool time growing up. A lot of fighting, a lot of getting beat up, a lot of chasing dudes down, a lot of getting chased back home. Gang stuff, obviously, just because it was like a second home. It wasn't anything where, I mean, looking back at it now, it's like it made sense then. Maybe it's foolish now, but it was just a lot of moving around just because we all lived together. We all friends together, and we ended up just doing dumb stuff together, right? From there, moved to the north side of Chicago, so I was lucky enough to get to know the whole city in this small time frame. So 10 years on the south side, or 12 years on the south side, moved to the north side, got to know the north side. That's where the true affiliations became a thing, trying to fit in, be with the right crowds, a little bit of skateboarding, a little bit of gang stuff, a little bit of BMXing, you know what I mean? All that good stuff. From there, right my senior year, I started jiu-jitsu. So it was like 2001 when I first started jiu-jitsu, way back when. And that was another group, right? Everything's cliquish, and every one of those has its own little groups and its own little tough guys and push it to the limit types. So on the north side, that's where everything kind of came together. Military became something that I really wanted to do. And then that was the big next section of my life, was join the military in 2005. From 2005 to 2007 was all train up stuff, deployed in 2007. From 2007 to 2009, we were in Iraq, southern Baghdad, came back, became a drill sergeant. That was where I fell in love with teaching as a whole. I mean, the military paid and sponsored my train the trainer, right? So it was like the coolest experience ever. Became a drill sergeant. That was super cool. Left that, well, still in there. I was in the reserves at that point with the 95th as a drill. From that, I bounced into contracting, only contracted for about 2 years. Worked in Australia, Barbados, Jamaica. And I'm just like getting through this. But in all of these sequences, I trained everywhere. I fought everywhere. We dealt with bad dudes everywhere. And that's kind of what's going to lead up to the Rogue Method side of things. But from contracting, came back to Chicago, settled in, became a cop. I didn't always want to be a cop. Not like most people that are like, I've always wanted to be a cop since I was a kid. That really wasn't me. I was kind of run from the police at one point, and now to become the police just made sense because I was home, and all of my now training was like, well, I could do the same thing. Another essential gang, right? The cops are a gang, especially in Chicago. It's very much cliquish depending on what units you're with. So it was patrol for a while. You got to go through the probation series and get off of that, and then went to the Narcotics team, was on a tag team for a little bit, then Narcotics, which was the coolest extent of the whole thing. That's a lot of more close contact dealings with people, fighting in gangways, fighting in cars, fighting in laundry rooms. I remember getting punched in the back of the head by my own guys trying to punch the guy that I was trying to hold into a corner. It's just hilarious stuff happening in small spaces, and that's kind of where all of this leads to. It makes sense to do that. But then I left Chicago, moved to Arizona, and been in Arizona since 2018. It was the greatest decision ever. I was skydiving a lot, and that's what kind of got me here. I was like 300 skydives into my first year skydiving, which is like high speed jumps. And then moved to Arizona, was a deputy here for a little while. So went from like city streets to high desert terrain in a pickup truck or in a 4x4 truck, just driving cross country, an hour and a half to some calls sometimes. And again, having to be alone and dealing with people in their homes, the whole fighting at proximity or being close and uptight with people just made sense. And it's like, why not let the people do this as well? So that's me in a nutshell. A lot of military, law enforcement, street fighting stuff, and just happy to be alive now. Because I look back and I'm like, man, there was a lot of times where I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for some quick decision making.
Well, Raul, I would say, and this is what I thought, because I know a bit about your background, and again, been following you for a while, and then you explaining some of that even in more detail. I mean, that's the perfect route to do what you do. And more importantly, I think, not just from the teaching and the exposing people to your methods, pun intended, is that there's also, we know that mindset is so important. And we talk about this on the show every now and then, is how do you develop mindset? You do it by doing hard things. And if you're folks like us that, I was in some fights, and I've always been in martial arts, but luckily I didn't have to experience some of the things that you experienced. Right. But my point behind all that is that you worked the hard way to get your mindset. Am I wrong there?
Everything was the difficult route when it could have been maybe simpler. I could have learned some stuff from books or from experienced folks. I think my route was just to deal with it the hard way, and I still kind of do it to myself to this day.
So a couple of little things off topic, and then I'm gonna ask a question regarding some of your narcotics work. Number one, when you were in Chicago, did you ever run into either Larry Lindemann or Paul Sharp?
Yes, I trained with Paul Sharp, not Larry. I trained with Paul Sharp early in my career, and I actually have a note right here to give him a shout out because he was instrumental in some of my pistol shooting and growth into my own performance and how I taught people as well. So Paul Sharp is a hell of a character. Him and Ryan Hoover are my two biggest inspirations for what I do and how I teach. Even to this day, I see their material. I see what they're saying. I've had Ryan with me in March or February of this year. We did a collab class in California.
Yep.
I still stay in touch with these guys. I love what they post. I love what they do. And both of those guys, one combatives wise, mindset, physical fitness, shooting, those two guys have been key pillars in that. So Paul Sharp is a hell of a guy.
Yeah. And massive influence on us as well. I've trained under Paul as well. Just an incredible wealth of knowledge. And it is funny. And, I was going to bring in Craig Douglas and part of this discussion regarding, his path and UC work. But I'll never forget my first DCQC, and it was in Phoenix, by the way. Well, I guess it was in, I'm drawing a blank, outside of Phoenix. I'll remember here in a second. I've been there like 3 times. But anyway, where the range work was done, well, the whole thing was done, but it's actually it's outside of Pinal County, or is it inside Pinal? Anyway, doesn't matter right now. My brain's full of a bunch of crap right now. But so the second question I was because it was Cecil Birch who hosted that one, and we were sitting down to dinner, and I'll never forget. I had a decent day. Sometimes we have really bad days in those classes, but I had a decent day. And Craig looked at me, said, "Eric, yeah, you need to meet Paul Sharp. He would destroy you, by the way."
Paul's a savage for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't know Craig real well then, but and of course he was kind of playing, but he was being serious. It's like at that point. But yeah, so then that's the other question. So you're in Phoenix. Have you run into Cecil?
No, I've heard a lot of great things. I met him in person the last time that Craig was here in Surprise, Arizona, not too far from here. He was doing, I think, one of his blade classes. And I went in just to say hi, because if he's in town, I'm going to go say hi, right? Mm-hmm. And so I went to say hi to Craig, and that's where I met Cecil for the first time, in person at least. I know I've commented on some of his stuff. I've seen his things around. I know friends who have trained with him, and he's definitely on my to-do list, considering he lives maybe 45 minutes away from here.
Yeah, Raul, you're an experienced instructor yourself, awesome in everything you do as well. What's so interesting is when you get to train with other people that have different methods and different experiences. Aaron can attest, we've trained under Cecil as well. Just his methods, to even just teaching every level of jiu-jitsu and wrestling for the street. Phenomenal.
Awesome.
So I didn't mean to get off on the diatribe.
No, that solidifies my already desire to train with those guys. So yeah, happy to hear that.
So regarding Craig's experiences in UC work, and I know that you've probably heard him talk about how, he had some failures, mm-hmm. some very bad failures that, again, proved to him that the methodologies that he was training in didn't have the efficacy that he needed. So it, put him on a different path. And I'm just curious, did your narcotics work? Because you talked about, getting into fights in cars, close quarters, all that. Did you have a similar epiphany going through that in that portion of your job?
Definitely. So I was lucky enough to play a little bit of all the roles, but the role that really solidified training for me was when I was the enforcement guy. So usually how it'll be is like you have your by guys, and then you'll have your surveillance crew, and then you have the enforcement car. And the enforcement car is like, once the deals are done and you're going to close in and put people in cuffs, that's what we were doing. And that's where a lot of the stuff was happening, right? Dudes pitching things and you having to chase them. And maybe you're not wearing all the gear that you normally would be wearing in a full duty officer setup. So some of your stuff maybe falls out. So some of the drills we run were from scenarios where things fall out and you're looking at another dude in the eye and he's the bad guy, or in the scenario or in this situation, right, where he's the bad guy and you're the good guy, and maybe a gun falls between you two and you're looking at each other like, what's going to happen next, right? Do I fight the dude or do I pitch myself down for the gun? And nobody does anything. You're like, well, that's cool. You're able to pick your stuff up and handle an arrest. Or it could have completely went the other way where he dives for it, gets to it first, and now you're having to tussle over this thing. And it's your own equipment, right? So sometimes it's not even their stuff that's the problem. It's your stuff that's the problem. So a lot of what I fed into my program was to retain your stuff, how to be the strongest, best, most technical individual that carries stuff. So you can't get through my defenses is the way we run our program. It's more, how do I stop you from even getting close to me so we don't have to navigate the problems of us being on top of each other. And that came from a lot of that stuff. Like, guys will reach for your gun, not from a distance, but when you're up close and tight with them, when you're already touching them to put cuffs on. So if you can imagine putting a guy up against the car, his hands are on the hood, and you go to grab one hand and he just reaches back with the other hand and tries to grab your gear. Maybe he grabs the gun, maybe grabs a mag, maybe grabs a taser, maybe takes your radio or something, but they would always reach for stuff. And it was like, all right, we need to prevent some of this stuff here. So better positioning, better angles, all the stuff that led to some of the main portions of the curriculum was definitely that, having to close the gap on somebody. And I get it that not everyone does, but sometimes you do. And so understanding what's happening there is very important. And we play from an outside in game and then from the inside out game in our training scenarios, where we get you really good at hand length, right? So just touching range, and then which would be your posts. So post range, and then you get to your frame range, and then you get to your like breath range where you're just head to head with somebody else. So we do the same things that a lot of the programs offer. And what I thought was going to be important, and what I knew, actually, I didn't think it. I thought it before, and then I solidified the idea when I took other people's courses, including Craig's, was, what are these guys doing so that when we come into the market, we offer a benefit and we don't compete with other people in that way. So to me, seeing everybody's program was like, all right, cool, this is what they're doing. Well, then this is what we are going to do so that we don't stack the same stuff. And so if you take my class and you take ECQC, it fills in whatever blanks were missing from what I thought was missing from that class, which is a completely well-rounded class, I thought. But some of the stuff that we do, a little bit more striking integration, a little bit more hip fighting and fighting at a distance, not merging so quickly. I was like, well, cool. If they're already doing this, we're going to do this. And now it complements. And that was my whole goal with Rogue Methods when I jumped in. How can I complement everybody's material so that I have zero I had zero interest in competing or bad blood, and I think that's why we kind of just coast and nobody messes with us. Nobody talks shit that I know of, and we're just known as a training group that exists now in the space because I looked at everybody's stuff and I was like, all right, let's complement, not compete for no reason. And so a lot of that came from even then when other instructors at the police academy, I was lucky enough to teach in Chicago as well. When other guys were teaching material, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to say some stuff too, but I'm going to say the stuff that maybe they missed or stuff that I thought was important, but I'm not going to just say what they said again, right? Or try to make it seem like I know more than those guys. Let me just talk about this little side note that maybe they didn't touch on. And sometimes we have a lot of information in our heads, right? And we hit the key points, but we miss all these little small details. And that's where I try to fit in with myself, my programs, and when I have conversations with other people. It's like, if one of us missed something, hey, we fill in the blanks for each other, and life is just better that way.
Well, that's awesome. And I think that's important to point out that, you know, there is areas for everybody in this space to be doing work. And I mean, you know, you've probably seen the Combative Summit. I attended that last year. Amazing. A lot of different instructors arriving at pretty much some of the same exact methods, right? With slightly different takes. And maybe in some cases, some disagreements. I'm not saying there was there. I'm just saying that, you know, folks in the combatives, and let's just say it, combatives with weapons. And I know John Valentine will say that's just combatives. And but I sometimes I use that just to add some clarity because some people don't know. So. But yeah, you know, when it's plugging into weapons, there's a lot of room in this space, to be honest. And to me, what I see is opportunity, you know, and man, at some point, we're going to get into one of your classes for certain or possibly host you. That'd be awesome as well.
Yeah, it'd be great to show just a little bit of what we do. So, and again, it just fills in the blanks, man. And that's what I wanted for us. And with how I see the future of this, since we're on the topic of combatives and how it's going to grow and evolve and how there's space for everybody, my main goal was to find younger instructors that were doing some good things and then hyping them up, giving them what we have as older guys, right? I'm older. I'm like 42, pushing almost mid 40s, right? So I want to see the 30-year-old guys, the 27-year-old guys that are strong, capable, and like, how can I feed them work? How can I get them into the business so that they're even starting younger than what we did? Sure, they might not have that 10-year lag of fighting overseas because there's no wars for them to fight right now. The law enforcement side is changing. A lot of law enforcement is taking a step back from being proactive, so they're not even getting hands-on with people. So there's not a lot of places to gain rock solid individual experience. But if they get experience from guys like us that have been there for a while, then I think growing the next generation of instructors was just a no-brainer for me. And I started to find these younger guys. I have 3 or 4 young guys that I think are going to be phenomenal instructors in the future. And that's what the goal for me and Rogue Methods, the secondary goal outside of the best training that we can offer. And this is another one I was going to mention. People give me a lot of stink eye for saying we have the best program. And I say it not because it devalues anybody else's program. And I don't think anybody else's program is not the best. But if you have a program and you don't think your program is the best, why would anybody want to train with you?
Yeah.
So you should see your program as the best program that you can offer, but it doesn't take away from anybody else's program because they're offering you the best program that they could offer. It's like the whole idea that just because somebody's a millionaire doesn't mean that it's your fault, right? That you're not a millionaire. It's one of those like same weird little ways of thinking. So for me, it was like, how can we put out the best program? I think we put out the best program. And now how do we pass that on to the younger dudes so that they can be the best when it's their time to be there? And now we just have a bunch of friends, right? Why have enemies when you can have friends?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Very cool. And again, you talk about thinking positive. That's something I see you do a lot on your post. And we understand the value of positive thinking and how important it is to mindset and all of that. So that's the way I see that as well. I mean, you're propping up your thought process on your program, and man, that adds a lot for your clients, I'm sure. Well, cool. So go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, on the topic of Chicago, so this might delve us into a little bit of a side category and maybe a little political, but we can't have a former narcotics agent or officer from Chicago without picking your brain on the current situation of law enforcement there, crime, who's running the show in the police departments, etc. What kind of thoughts can you offer on that?
So I have many, and so do a lot of my friends who are still there. And it's pretty simple. In the older, not even in the old days, because when I was a kid, there was a few mayors, right? There was Mayor Daley, and then the Daley family were, they ran the city, and it was very much like Teamster based, like showcasing, right? So the mayor was very involved in that. I don't want to say he had ties to anything specific. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. That's not my place to judge or talk about. But he was connected to the point where the city streets were always clean. The garbage was picked up on time. Crime was less so because he allowed the police to do their job. He allowed the Teamsters to do their work. So the city worked together, maybe not in the cleanest ways, right? Like how people romanticize and wish that everything was like honky-dory government cares for you kind of deal. It was very much backdoor deals. We'll give you this contract if you make sure this never gets there and this doesn't go bad, because everyone's doing things together. So everybody was earning together financially, and the city was reaping that reward by having a good, clean city, good water, good infrastructure that was always taken care of. And then something shifted when the Daley family left. Their ties to the Teamsters left, and now they got actual politicians in place that are looking more for political gain versus how do we make the city work? Because they were a traditional family. They were from Chicago, so they were invested in the city. They lived in the city, so they cared about the city. Now what we're getting police chiefs that are not from Chicago. So they're bringing guys in that were former FBI guys from New York, and then you'll get somebody from California, and you'll get somebody from Dallas, Texas, and guys that are not even from the city who are now running the show, and they're just there for their next political play. So how can I do a good job for 3 years so that I can go be a mayor somewhere else, right? So they're doing these like stints in in major cities, where before it was run by city people who were from there, generations of Chicago folk. And that's why things were taken care of a little bit earlier. Fast forward to now, where everything's just a political play. How can we get a colored mayor in? Because that's going to be the DEI thing to do. And that's what's wrecking the city, because now nobody's held accountable, because now you can't even knock on their doorstep because it becomes a racial thing. And it has nothing to do with that. And it has everything to do with work ethic. And so the work ethic has changed from the very top of the food chain. And you guys know this from leadership roles. If the top of the food chain is poisoned, everything down the chain is going to be bad, because then nobody has anybody to answer to. Because even if the person who should be answering to the problem is held accountable, they're not really being held accountable. They're just slapping on the wrist and getting them promoted, right, or demoted into a different position in one of these city works. So the people see that, the rank and file see this, and they start working less, they start doing less, and it's more about just showing up, collecting the paycheck. And so that allows the criminal elements to be emboldened. So they're like, well, cool, if these guys are just cruising by, they're not even looking at us anymore. And this is now, we're talking like street level cop stuff. If the cops are just driving past criminals and not even looking at them and just focusing forward and driving, they're going to do whatever they want, because they know that there's no consequence to their actions. They know that they're getting released early. They know that charges aren't sticking the way they used to. And then even if they do, the judge is throwing everything out. And so that slowly frustrates the working force. And now they're like, well, why am I writing a report that takes me 3 hours? If the dude is getting out in an hour, he's out before I'm done with my report. What's the point of writing this report? Other than I'm going to collect some money or some overtime if it does go overtime. But that kind of stuff, it frustrated me. I'm not even there anymore. And it's frustrating to hear this from my people that are still there. And they're like, dude, it's not even worth it. It was a lot of fun when we were there. I mean, one of the hottest summers when I was working narcotics, it was in 3.5 months, we had put handcuffs on 180 something people. That was almost like 2-3 people a night.
Wow.
4 sometimes. And it was a hot summer. It was that summer of 2018. Or 2017, where the heroin crisis was just spiked right before the fentanyl crisis hit. So we had the wave of heroin before fentanyl. And so it was a hot summer, and that was still a cool time, because every arrest we made, we had like a 98% conviction rate or higher, just because we wrote good paper. We were allowed to work. So they're like, hey, we trust you guys. We trust your leadership. You handle it how you guys are going to handle it. Bring back the reports. Make sure you're within the bylaws of police work, right? Don't violate any civil rights or civil liberties. Do your job well and have at it. And that's how it used to be. It used to be a lot of that, like, hey, be the best that you can. We trust you and support you. Now there's a lot of oversight and overmanagement and micromanagement. And so what happens now is nobody wants to do anything because nobody wants to get in trouble. So the city is it's in shambles. Unfortunately, I have family that still lives there, and they're worried that it's going to get worse. And I think it'll get worse until you get another strong mayor and some strong police chiefs that are more about doing the right work instead of just getting things done for the sake of TV.
Well, so what you're saying, I know I'm just putting a fine point on it, but it sounds like what you're saying is these politicians that say they're making things better for underserved people and demographics, that they're really not. They're doing things that are harming them, right? I mean, I was uneloquent in how I said that, but these politicians are saying one thing that they're doing, and the results are not adding up.
Right. And that's what it seems like it's been. They say it enough that they believe it, and they hope that you believe it because they said it a bunch of times. But there is an actual number sheets that the city runs up, and I think it's every week or two, they get these sheets, and it shows you all the crime stats and where they're happening. And that's kind of how information gets passed out into the districts. And then they make decisions as to, are we going to send more manpower in that direction? Are we going to send the detectives over there? Are we going to pull from one side and send them to this side? And that's how they move manpower around in the city, depending on how aggressive certain areas are with crime. And so when they get those numbers in, if they get those numbers, the numbers are pretty honest. But how they'll change it is like, well, it was because of this event, or it was this thing. So take 10% of that off. And now the new sheet with the 10% off here, 20% off there says, oh, crime is down. But that's because they're able to manipulate the numbers, and it's super frustrating for the people who are actually working. So it's rough to see.
Well, you just piqued my interest when you enunciated some of that. we just had John Hearn on not too long ago, and one of the things we talked about is the transition from the UCR, FBI UCR to the NIBRS system. And to my knowledge, and you can absolutely correct me if I'm wrong, to my information, in 2021, Chicago stopped passing their data up to the NIBRS / UCR. So again, the NIBRS numbers showed a decline in murder when there wasn't a decline. I don't want to get down too deep into the NIBRS numbers, but I personally found that interesting. I mean, am I correct on that Chicago stopped passing up that information to NIBRS? And, your thoughts on that?
If it was an election year, or if it was a cycle where they needed popularity in the political realm, they will not report certain things, or they just won't pass information on, or they'll hold the information just long enough and then pass it on as time fades. But I have heard similar things where they'll hold certain numbers out of the public realm for a little bit. So, yeah.
It's just convenient that, in 2019 to 2020, we had that, and this was even low numbers, was the 30% increase in murder, which, looking at other numbers with the Bureau of Justice Statistics, it was probably more like 44%. And so it was still climbing. And again, Chicago pulled their numbers, so did LA, and so did New York. So, but yeah, again, I didn't want to get too far off because I want to get back to discussing your stuff. But yeah, when you talked about those numbers, the crime numbers, that really made me think about that, man. It's
you're
crazy.
Talking about like national level numbers. There's like city block numbers. Like there's some city blocks that rank super high with crime activity. And again, they'll just manipulate those numbers. But yeah, on a national scale, if they're sending that up, they're not going to, you throw in something heavy duty like Chicago into the national scale, that throws a national number into this skyrocket. So
yeah,
I'm not surprised they would hide that.
Yeah. Yeah. When you got those three cities, their numbers are not in the NIBRS numbers. That's a problem.
Yeah. The three major cities of crime.
Exactly. Well, so you kind of hit on, I really like the way you described how you arrived at Rogue Methods. Can you talk a little more about the philosophy of why you teach what you teach?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with informing the public and making them better equipped. And this again comes from being in law enforcement. It's being on the patrol side, and even on the deputy side here was sometimes, and honestly, I think if people were just better trained, they would handle situations for themselves. And not saying that every situation should be handled by the public. Sometimes you need backup. And in my opinion, law enforcement should be the backup to something you couldn't handle, but we shouldn't have to be, or law enforcement, I'm not a cop anymore. Law enforcement shouldn't be the problem solvers for everything. I think the community should learn to solve some of their own problems. And that would keep law enforcement out of people's hair, which allows people to be a community, right? But everybody wants this oversight, but then they don't want oversight. It's such a conflicting thing. Humans are usually the element that throws everything for a loop. But the philosophy was this. It was pretty simple. It was, how do we give people the skills who don't have them? Because we all know this. Some people are more office oriented. They work inside. They don't get a lot of outdoor time. They don't have time to go to the gym. They're just busy scheduled folks. You have people who are athletes in high school who have some potential. You have people who continue to be athletes. And then how do we get them all in one room to learn some skills that'll help them and their families? And so the philosophy was, how can we build a program that can touch these three types of people: the better trained, the wanting to train, but maybe just getting 1 or 2 days a week of fitness stuff, and then the no training, which is a very unique thing to get these three types of people in one room, getting them all trained up and having them able to walk away with something tangible that they can practice on their own, that they can practice with their kids. A lot of the drills we do are drills you can do with your kids that you can play around when you get home, your wife to empower her to be a little bit more aggressive. So the philosophy was to take things that can empower the people so they don't need outside help as much. And so it's like, how do we do that? How do we get everybody to do this? Well, the program needs to make sense. The verbiage needs to be easy to understand, and the drills need to be something fun that people are willing to do. So it was a lot of that, and you guys know this from adult learning, is like we can't teach adults the same way that we teach kids, and kids kind of learn differently than this. But the one thing we all have in common is playing games and having fun. If we can make everything a game and then add a little bit of intensity, take away a little bit of risk and let them explore this realm where, yeah, it's dangerous, but it's fun. And so a lot of that is how we tune in. So we start off with jokes, we start off moving around, and right away everyone's defenses kind of go down and their interest is piqued and they're willing to just have fun and headbutt each other and grab each other by the shirts and just pushing and pulling. And some of our warm-ups are just that. Like, hey, you're going to walk down this line and your partner's going to push you from behind and you're going to have to regain your balance. Your partner's going to push you on the chest, you're going to regain your balance. He's going to push you from the side. And so now they're already like, some of these people, and you guys know this again, I repeat this, so we all see this often, is some people haven't pushed another human in 10 years. Some people haven't grabbed somebody by the neck in 10 years or just grabbed their belt and shook them. And it's like, it's bad and it's good at the same time, right? I guess we're getting to a place where people don't have to do that, but now it's spiking where you have to be able to do all of that, and they didn't have time to catch up. So the idea was that get everybody trained as quickly as possible so they don't need law enforcement. And then twofold, alleviating how much law enforcement has to do to help you and empowering you to help yourself. So if we could do that, that's kind of what we've been doing. Our reviews are great. I did a few things differently with Rogue Methods. I don't know if you guys noticed on the website, there are no instructor bios. There's no names, and it's unheard of for a website to not, a company, right, that's teaching formidable things like weapons retention and recovery and all these things, to not have a bio breakdown of who the instructors are. And I did that to mess with the market. I was like, I'm going to make a company work without having to sell any one person or any one experience or any one background. And so it's done well. I mean, for 3 years, we've been grinding almost 2 to 250 days a year on the road. And again, the idea of not having a bio was one of those things where I was playing with the market just to see what would happen, and it worked out well.
Well, Raul, I will tell you that I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ear or sound, hey, yeah, but I will tell you, when I did notice that on your site. But again, I knew about you and whatnot, but I assumed that had something to do with it. That because we can have instances where people are chasing after a figure, right? And I think that's laudable that you did that, because then it does become about your courses itself. There's plenty of information on there, great descriptions. What I will say to you, I cannot emphasize enough how important that play is in drills. And sometimes not everything has to be a full evolution, full speed. One of the other things I noticed, and a lot of the other folks that we train with as well say this as well, and that's that you don't have to do the final drills, right? But I would bet that even when you offer that to your clients, even those that probably would have the trepidation probably go ahead and do it anyway. Am I right?
Yeah. There's the only time we've had people not do a drill is they were holding back because they had an injury that they didn't want to exacerbate. And I
completely understood.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want you to do this drill, because it's one thing to drill at a pace where both of you are like understanding. And so this is a few little things. One is you keep the same partner roughly for the whole time, because as the days go by, you get to know each other. And so you know when they're about to tense up, you know when they're going to do something weird. So if I add you to a new partner to do the final drills, then it's really tough for you because this guy's a lot different energy than the person you've been working with for the last 2 days. But I'll mix and match partners. If I don't like the way two partners are, one guy's more skilled than the other, or maybe one dude's a little more, I'll switch partners around to make sure everybody has the right partner. That's
Good.
one.
Man, that's unique.
We really try because the experience is for them. Like I've already done this and I fight in every class with one of the students, one of the instructors, which I think
I was going to bring that up, brother. Get some. Yeah.
I get in there and I show them what it's supposed to feel like. And there's some drills where it requires what we call quote unquote bad guy energy. So not skilled fighter, but maybe just overwhelmingly aggressively pulling something, right? So if I'm overly aggressively pulling the handle of your gun that's in your holster and you're just holding on to not let it come out, then I give you very specific energy where your partner already knows the drills. He knows what you're going to do to counter. So he might just go counter to counter to counter to counter, right? So it just becomes this counter fighting game where I'm just going to give you one energy. And if you get it, awesome. And if you don't, we try again. But I'm not trying to win against the people that, especially as one of the coaches, I'm not trying to win against them. I'm trying to get them to perform the skills to hit the checkpoints so that they can successfully learn something from the drill. And so the bad guy energy is very important. So I'll get in there and I'll mix it up with everybody. To this day, I fight. I don't care if I get hurt in the classes. I live through injuries. I'm currently mountain biking because I can't run. So it's like I just live injury to injury. Whatever injury is next, I deal with it and then I pick up another thing. But hands get wrecked a lot in those classes. You know how that goes with tools, right? Your hands get mangled. Yeah. But yeah, we get in there with the folks. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, incidentally, in Cliff Byerly's class, of course, myself and another partner, we ended up fighting over a gun, and it happens, in that situation, and my index finger definitely got wrecked, and I dealt with that damn finger healing for a year. I mean, in all honesty, that's a minor injury. And frankly, our audience members know I've been dealing on and off with my back again this year. So, we just got to, I always write a list. Okay, I got this injury right now. Okay, what can I do right now? And put my focus in that. So that's what we got to do. Just keep trying to stay consistent in what we can do.
So one other little unique feature with the shirts that we have shirts that people can purchase, but then every year I do a different logo and a different color. And it's a shirt you can only get after you complete the 2 days. So I don't do certificates unless they need them for work or something. I do it's a handshake and a t-shirt as a you fought to the very end kind of deal. And if you don't I have done this where people won't do the drill because they're injured and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. Next time you come, you'll get the shirt because you'll fight, but you have to fight to wear the shirt. And that was one of those first unique things people were super pumped about it. They were like, oh, we get a shirt. And then now people wear it. And I get photos from Disneyland and people are just randomly, they'll run into each other who were friends. And they're like, dude, we got our shirts. And it's it was a cool little thing to definitely build the community aspect of it. Something people can see in photos and be like, oh, that's the 2023 fight shirt. That's the 2024 fight shirt. That was that 2022 fight shirt. Man, you did that class. And so it does spark this conversation thing. So for me, it was something that'll be cool. We can all wear it on day 2. I wear the shirt that they're going to earn that day. And then they're like, what's that shirt? We haven't seen that on the website. I was like, oh, you'll see it at the end, man. And it's a handshake and a t-shirt. And it commemorates their success at the end of the 2 days. And that was a cool little feature that people were really excited that we were doing for them.
That's badass. And Aaron can attest to this. I think all of us that when we go through courses like that, you develop a camaraderie, and you should be any person self-selecting into any course like yours, like any of the ShivWorks Collective or anybody doing similar training, Kelly McCann's courses, anybody making it through courses that self-selecting that, they deserve to feel pride. And no doubt that t-shirt is one way that, they feel pride, and they should.
Yeah. And all these classes are tough. I love going to them, and it does. At the end of the 2 days, you look around and you're like, damn, dudes, we did this. And everyone's like, yeah, we did this. This is awesome. And now you have friends you can talk to. We have a small network of all the students that hang out. They go to classes together. They do other stuff together. If they're ever driving through town, I've had a guy who travels for work. And he was in town. He's like, "Hey, I'm in Phoenix. You know anywhere we can that you would recommend to eat?" I was like, "Yeah, meet me here." And he's like, "What? You're gonna eat with me?" I was like, "Yeah, let's go to lunch, dude. You're in town."
Cool.
And people will just do that as they pass by each other. And I love seeing two of people who've come through our program. I'll see them in other classes, and I'm like, "Yes, collect the information. Don't get stagnant. Don't idol worship. Don't only like one dude's stuff. You have to see what everybody offers, because everybody offers, maybe it's the same topic, but they'll offer their life experience that got them to why they like that one thing. And maybe that works for some people. Some people develop stuff based off of injuries or inabilities, right? So let's say a guy who has no right arm, he's going to develop stuff really good with the other side. And I'm like, well, I'm really good with my right arm. He's going to teach me how to be good with my left arm. I probably should see this guy. Right. And so that's what piques my interest with everybody. I look and see, I was like, okay, he came from that background. Oh, I'd love to see his take on this, or that person's take. So when people ask me, who should I train with? I'm always like, hey, train with whoever calls to you. Right. Don't look at, I mean, obviously everybody looks at resumes. So look at resumes however you want to see them, but listen to them talk, listen to their podcast, and then see if you jive with that. Because there's people that you won't jive with just by watching an interview. I know there's people that I won't train with just by watching, and I'm like, oh, he says all the right things, but he says them incorrectly, and there's just something wrong with the way he spun information. And it's like, all right, well, maybe in a few years, because people change and they grow and they develop, which I think is super cool in this space as well. Who I was 5 years ago even is not who I am today. This like super positive, push hard forward energy is like in the last 3 years, that's where that developed. Right when I launched Rogue Methods, I knew I had to be at the top of my energy levels and at the top of my motivation levels. And it's been this beautiful thing now as I wake up smiling. I go to bed smiling. I'm beat up and broken. I just kicked the gear shifter on my mountain bike yesterday as I fell over the handlebars, and I just sat there and laughed. And then I was like, all right, cool, we'll do this again tomorrow. And it's just like this wave of positivity that just carries forward on everything. And tons of messages come through. They're like, dude, your positivity's got me being positive, and now my kids are enjoying me more. And I think that's how we push it forward, man. Just be you, and people will gravitate to that, I think. And so that's what I tell people. Find the people that call to you, go train with them. You could always make more money. Time is one of those things where you don't want to lose too much of. So pick the people correctly. If they're in town, obviously take it. That's a no-brainer. You don't have to travel somewhere. You don't have to spend extra money. So if somebody comes through your network or your area, take the opportunity to train with them. But make sure that they call to you. That's my advice for people that are seeking training.
Awesome. So your close quarters, or your close contact gunfighter is your flagship now. Is that am I correct there?
Yeah, that's our mainstay program. We just launched the level 2 version of it, which is more like a fight camp. I'll have 3 coaches on the second day teaching 3 different skills, but the first day is all going to be level 2 material, fighting from morning to end. Lunch is provided, fireplaces in the afternoon, cookouts, like this giant gathering, kind of like what it sounds like the Combative Summit is, but only in-house. So I'll bring in instructors from different genres. So like for this one, I have Jonah Norman doing knife for us. I have Dan Murray doing striking in the clinch. All things striking, I called it, because he's an MMA fighter, Bellator, UFC guy.
Oh yeah, I know exactly who he is.
Beats us all up. It's great. You know what I mean? He's one of the toughest dudes I've known. He's one of the main reasons why we all stay in the shape that we stay in, and we're always shirtless and running around, tan bodied up, because for who he is, man, he's such a good motivator. And he's always like, we gotta be freaking jacked and shirtless. And I'm mocking him right now by being like, whoa. That's how he walks around. So it's super cool. But yeah, and then Mark Olson will be doing pistol rifle combo. So we break it up. We give people striking, we give people knife stuff, we give people everything that we think is important, and we'll have vehicles out there. It's just a 20-hour hangout fest on a private ranch. So that's our 2-day model that we're going to be running. But our level 1 close contact gunfighter is our mainstay. How to protect your gear. So it starts off with medical. We do tourniquet applications. Just a quick recap on what, because everybody understands the tourniquet stuff. So what I thought was like, well, if we need medical and nobody's really touching on it, and sometimes it's being touched on for too long of a period of time, right? So it's like an 8-hour block for tourniquet. I remember going through that in the middle. There was like 8 hours of tourniquets. Jeez, this is horrible. So we've narrowed down to the most important parts. I think the medical portion lasts 45 minutes max, and 35 of those minutes are drills and scenarios. And one of the big ones that we do is vehicle scenarios with tourniquets, because you're going to run into accidents. And this again comes from law enforcement. Car wrecks are way more prevalent than shootouts for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so you might have to come up and legs are pinned. So how do we navigate a tourniquet when legs are pinned? How do we navigate a tourniquet when the doors don't open, when they do open, when we can move somebody, when we cannot move somebody? And everybody works. So guys self-applying inside while partners applying from the outside window to the inside. So car scenarios, open environment scenarios, individual and team-based scenarios. And so medical gets covered, then all of the fight drilling. Hand fighting, head fighting, hip fighting, all the good stuff, underhooks, overhooks. I favor an overhook instead of an underhook for weapon stuff. For fighting, I do favor the underhook. Again, all reasons we go over in the class, but just so you guys kind of can see a twist in there. From there, we do weapons retention outside of the holster, so gun in hand already. We do weapons retention in the holster, how to get people from getting to your midline, and then we do weapons retention in the environment, so recovering it or having to take it away from somebody else. Then we do a safety brief like everyone else as far as the shooting portion goes. We do a lot of shooting. I don't draw and shoot. This was another big one that some of the other companies were doing, is that they introduced the gun into the fight. For me, I don't, because they're already doing it. And so to me, it made sense to, how do we get the gun away from the fight? So instead of drawing at the clinch range or at contact range, how do we retract the gun, protect the gun, make the space, put the gun away, deal with the fight back to hands? So just offering a different layer. So same idea, same infighting in that tight space, but just a different take on it. After the shooting portion, we do the scenario work, and the scenario work, again, because they've been with their partners, it becomes almost safer. I'm like, hey, if you do spastic energy, your partner's not going to have a chance to say, hey, my finger's in the trigger guard, you're about to break it. Where if you guys are moving, and you'll hear me in videos be like, hey, strong energy, not spastic energy, strong energy, nice. Strong energy. And those are the cues for them to remember, to be powerful, but don't be jerky and snappy. And now your partner doesn't have a moment to tell you, hey, my wrist, and their wrist is blown out. So we've been really lucky with injuries. We've been lucky with a lot of things, but all that starts from day one, pushing the same partner around, touching the same partner, and then building that camaraderie where by the end of the day, you don't want to hurt the person you're with. You almost want to invite them over for a barbecue. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the goal there. And so we have a lot of a good time. It's a strong 2 days. And that's our main program. We also have pistol, carbine, more on the performance side. So we have a lot of a young instructor, Mark Olson, who does that. Hunter, Dylan, Dan Richardson, all these guys help out a lot. Joel Marks. But yeah, a little bit of everything: pistol, rifle, and then the fight program, which is our mainstay. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I would like to just mention something about the fact that you're teaming up partners and keeping them, for the most part, together. I'll tell you what, that speaks to me. You know, I am not near as experienced as Eric in jiu-jitsu and fighting, etc. I've taken a handful. I think I've taken 3 ECQCs. I've taken some courses from Cecil Birch and Cliff Byerly, and of course jiu-jitsu. So I'm used to bad breath distance, rolling with people, etc. But when it comes to these classes like what you're teaching and Craig, I do like having a partner that I'm comfortable with. And whenever we're told to, okay, switch partners, that makes me just a smidge uncomfortable at first. And to me, what you're doing seems like, if someone has my mentality, they might learn a little more because there's not that adjustment period and sometimes even awkwardness getting to know someone else, and you can barely talk to him because you don't know him, but you've been working with this other guy for the last hour. So that's really cool. I actually have not heard of that. Handling that kind of course like that.
That was a lot of just from coaching and doing like 2-hour seminars in a lot of places. Even with the police department, I would notice guys were already buddy. I'm like, okay, they'll push each other as hard as they want to go, right? So I'm sure if Eric's drilling with somebody he's known for a while, he's going to go harder with him. Even if the drill doesn't call for it to be hard, they're going to go at a certain pace. Where these other two guys who are just getting to know each other, they can go at whatever pace they want, and then they'll eventually get to that high speed stuff that Eric and his partner were doing. We just have to give them time to grow. And a lot of it is that overcoming their own little demons, and by somebody else working with somebody else, the same person, they're able to kind of like wash through that pretty quickly. And I found for what we do is it does expedite the more timid dudes or the dudes who don't have that much time grappling with strangers that are completely comfortable with it. It boosts their ability to catch up to the material a lot faster because they don't have to worry about, oh, well, that big dude or this guy too. And I approach it a little bit from the side of how, well, you know how for competition and even for MMA, there's weight classes. So I usually pair people up by height and similar weights. Obviously, we're not bringing out scales and being super, shirts off, scales on. It's not to that extent, but it is height and weight proportionate for the most part. And, the idea that the little person should beat the big person, I was like, yeah, that's if you're going to train for a long time. Like, you have to develop a lot of things before that. Strength absolutely matters. And so we try to dispel that right away. And I'm like, hey, if you want to fight the big dude at the end, we'll let you do that. But let's get skill developed first with somebody roughly your size, right? So there's a reason why at the highest levels of combat sports, there's weight classes. And so I try to pair people up by weight and height-ish. And so once they get comfortable with each other, by the end of day 2, they would want to do it with somebody else, but they're having so much fun with their partner that they'll just stay with their partner. And that was the goal, is to get people to learn faster with somebody they're comfortable with. And you guys see this all the time. If you work with pairs and people like that, you'll look and be like, okay, those two dudes are not comfortable together. Yep. One of them just doesn't like the other for some reason. And then you just shift partners. I had to do that. The last time I had to shift partners because they were just butting heads was I think we were in Detroit, and one dude was just overly aggressive and one dude was overly spastic. So they couldn't like meet in the middle to do the drill. One was like spastic, and the other dude was just like overly aggressive and like almost like a bully because he knew he was stronger than the spastic guy, which was then forcing the dude to be spastic even more. Yeah. So they were just like vibing with each other in the wrong energy. The energy wasn't flowing; it was crashing. And so I switched those two dudes up, and they got new partners. And then the rest of the time was awesome. And then they ended up coming back at the end and understanding each other better once they were able to work with somebody who kind of matched their energy. So I'm not into like the spiritual energy stuff, but I definitely think that people have certain vibes, and if you can get vibes to match, man, we're golden. And so it helps a lot. I like doing it that way. I've seen it done many different ways, partner rotations all the time. Sometimes just for fun, we'll do partner rotations, but for the most part, we keep the same partners for that very reason, expedite their ability to learn the material.
Interesting. I honestly, you got me doing some thinking on that, because certainly when I'm doing drills very similar, that I'm doing a lot of partner switching up. And so this makes me think, maybe trying some amalgamation.
Well,
of that,
guys, a good example is, again, I'm just making it clear, I'm a blue belt. I should probably be brown by now, right, Eric? Or at least purple for how long I've been at it. But I've had waning levels of interest and a few injuries here and there. But last week, my main coach was out of town, and a lot of the other people that are normally in my jiu-jitsu gym were gone. So I was there under a different instructor, and there were just completely different guys there. And I was just so uncomfortable. And most of the guys I was rolling with, all they cared about was winning the roll. And it's just, both guys, so only one guy's learning something there, maybe, right? But then last night, everybody was back. My coach was back, and partners that I really work well with. And all of a sudden, I just had twice the class by having some people that I was comfortable with, people that were good partners. That's another thing. Let's just say that. All of you out there listening, make sure you're a good partner in jiu-jitsu and in training these combatives things, because you're going to learn more and your partner's going to learn more. It's not all about you, right? So, and that's what, again, what was really nice about my class last night. I just really enjoyed the heck out of it because I really learned, because I was with people that I was comfortable with and that I know I can work well with.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, I hear a lot of what you're saying, Raul, and I like that philosophy. It's got me thinking for certain. And there is something about, some people are fine with, going hard. One of the things, and Aaron and I are both 50, and at some point, I mean, I know, Aaron. Yeah, I should be a brown belt by now, if not a black belt by now. But I'm like the same thing, It's one of those things that I'm definitely careful about. I honestly prefer rolling with purple and above. It's nothing against, because I got some really good friends. I was a damn blue belt for 11 years because I was focusing on other things. So my point is that, when I find the people that I can grow with and not get hurt, it's become a lot more important now at my age, or at our age. But I'm not saying there isn't a time and a place for a scenario that you're going at it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not at all saying that. And I know Aaron feels the same way. It's all of the baseline training that I think it's very important to have that philosophy that you have, Raul. And I will also add this: Aaron and I don't do near as much of the combative side as others. I want to do more of it, but when we do teach our combatives with weapons courses, and I'm just going to be upfront, learn this from Cecil Birch, is that we will tell the clients up front when they're about to have their final drill for the day, is we'll say, hey, listen, you're the good guy, bad guy. We want you to make the experience about the good guy. I'm not saying you have to lose. I'm not saying that at all. But I want you to have the end state of the experience being a good one for the good guy, and vice versa. So when you go and you're the good guy, we're going to ask him or her to make the experience good for you. Now, again, the intent, we're not trying to do full scale evolutions in our courses. Again, you mentioned, we got guys like you and Craig and the ShivWorks guys doing that stuff. What we're trying to aim for, maybe this will kind of tell a little bit about our philosophy on it, is we're actually trying to get people that will never go to courses like yours or ECQC, and then help them realize, hey, I can do that. And so again, I'm just letting you know our philosophy on it and how we do our drills. And it's not the same thing, but it's almost along the lines as what you're doing with the way you're keeping partners together. I really like that.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, and it's, if you can build that camaraderie right off the bat, to then ask one of them to do a certain energy for the other one, they'd be 100% for it, because they want to see their person succeed. And one of the things I tell everybody, and it's closer to the end of day 2, is, so my goals for everyone in the class is that nobody gets shot. I want nobody to get shot. And I want the gun to go off, and I want sims to fly, but I don't want anybody to get hit, because that means we're doing everything well. well enough that you're not getting hit, but the guns are going off. We do play in this realm where we self-induce malfunctions, which is another really unique thing in the space. I don't think I've not seen anyone else talk about it or do it. We self-induce malfunctions to make the gun inert, to build the fight, and to give ourselves time to think and not worry about a live gun with a bullet about to exit. If I self-induce a malfunction and I lose the gun, they have to physically do something to get the gun back into operations, which then gives me time to respond to what's going on in the environment. But one of the main goals is, one, nobody gets shot. That's my goal as a coach for the class. Nobody gets shot, but the gun goes off in different directions if it's going to go off and they're fighting. But I also tell both of them, you guys are both simultaneously playing two roles. You're the good guy and the bad guy. Both of you are the good guy and the bad guy. It just depends who has the gun at that moment. So sometimes, the iterations start with one person has the gun, and then the next iteration, the other person has the gun. But both of you are good guys and bad guys simultaneously. Just work with each other to get through the motions and try not to get shot by the gun. And if you're both trying not to get shot, you're going to find the right angles. You're going to learn to be behind the elbows. You're going to learn to find places to be that are safer than not. And you're also looking out for the other person, because you should be laughing at the end of it like, ha, you didn't get me. Ha, you missed. I forced you to miss. Like, it should be this fun thing that I get it. We are working in a life and death scenario. But if it's fun and it's training, people will more likely to explore, more likely to trust themselves to do certain actions. And then they will trust the material, and the material then becomes theirs. And that's always the goal for training with us, is if I can get the material to stick and make you feel like it's yours, you're more likely to use it. And so when we're coaching people, I tell people, I'm like, hey, make this kind of shape to you so that you trust it. Don't take just my word for it because I think it works or because we're telling you it works. Play with it so it becomes yours. Tweak it so that it becomes your little thing. And I tell people pretty early on, like, I'm going to feed you guys information as if you were coaches. And so when you give people that kind of like little bit of power where you're like, hey, you're a coach for your partner's a coach for you. So when I say things and your partner's doing it wrong, fix him until I can come back and fix him, or one of the other guys comes back and fix him. So now they're already in the mentality of like, I'm a coach, you're a coach, we're working together. It's more empowering. And it's just, it skyrockets learning. And that's, I think, why people have so much fun with it. I totally make it about them being coaches, them using the material to teach their friends and family, and then spreading that across their people, just in case, right? So again, if we can make people feel like the material is coming out of them by just practicing it for a couple of days, they're more likely to use it. They're more likely to trust it. And then that trust is what really binds us all together.
Man, great stuff. Digging it, Raul. Real quick,
yeah,
kind of shifting gears a little bit, because we normally do about an hour and a half. So I think this is probably a good segue. We were talking about, we all deal with injuries. It changes what you can do, what your training is at any given time, because we rotate in what we're focusing on because of things like that, or depending on what's going on in your life. Could be family related, could be work related, whatever. So I'm just
Tennis
curious.
elbow.
Yeah. As far as your personal training right now, what is your current focus, and or goals even in your own personal development?
Yeah. So a lot of it, like you mentioned it, like spot on. Everything either revolves around work schedules, family schedules, and injuries. And you kind of like weave in your stuff in there. So for me, a lot of body weight exercises, kettlebells and sandbags are my go-to for like strength, body endurance, just overall ability to manhandle humans. And I found that sandbags were the best for that. Kettlebells, because of the grip strength and the way they move in your hands, right? It looks a lot like you're holding a gun or a rifle or wrists or collar ties. So that's why I really enjoy the kettlebells for that development. So for me, kettlebells and sandbags are something I have at home that I can get into 20, 30 minutes. I have a heavy bag. That's one of my big ones. Jiu-jitsu, boxing, MMA are my combative elements. I do those three as often as possible. Sometimes it's every day. Sometimes it's 2 times a week. I've been kind of out of the striking and jumping around because I have an ankle injury, which pulled me out of trail running. So when an injury comes up, I just find the next activity that doesn't require that part of my body. So I went out and bought a mountain bike, and now I'm like cruising 20, 30 miles a day on a mountain bike. But now I'm falling off the mountain bike because I'm going faster than I should be on some stuff, and I'm learning more about mountain biking. So I told you earlier, I kicked my gear shifter and I broke it, had to get a new replacement put on there. I took a giant cholla cactus to my ankle the other day. I had to pull out 15 needles out of that bad boy.
Wow.
Oh, those are
I fell over the handlebars early on, and I really did some trauma to my upper thigh. It swelled out and got black and blue. Like basically my whole quad was pretty bad. And all of it because my ankle injury didn't let me trail run. And so I got the mountain bike became the next most painful thing to do. So I'm finding that there's injuries in all of our sports that keep us healthy, but they all help when the other things aren't accessible. So I haven't been doing a lot of grappling because of the ankle. And I noticed it too when I did one of the last drills. I knew it was going to hurt it, but the students were like, "Oh, you and the other coach, go for one." So we take our shirts off, we put the helmets on, we throw a gun in the mix, we're rolling around, and the very first thing when I base out, I feel my ankle, and I was like, "Oh, I knew that was going to happen." We finished the drill out though. Nobody got shot, went through it, had a lot of fun. The students always love seeing the instructors fight. I think that's one of the a key element. I want to see it more from instructors fighting with students, fighting with other coaches, letting the people see that they are doing the things they are asking them to do. And I think that's why there's a lot of trust with the Rogue Methods brand. They see the coaches getting in there and shooting each other, fighting each other, doing the mix up. So I think that's a huge one. But injuries are going to be the main one for guys our age. I'm older too. I'm like 42, like I said earlier. So trail running is becoming one of my most favorite activities. I ran my first ultra not too long ago. So I'll give you a timeline on running. This is kind of wild. I ran in the military, but nothing crazy. In January, I was like, I want to run a marathon. So mid-February, I run a marathon. Then I was like, what's next? Well, let's run an ultra. So by March, I ran my first ultra, 50K. I think it's like 32 miles, 38 miles, something like that. And then I was like, well, what's next? And then, so I have a 75K in September, a 100-miler in December, and then I have a 250-mile foot race in May of next year. So slowly training for those things, and mountain biking is becoming a new favorite addiction. I just keep adding things to do. My wife's like, "Man, where do you fit all this in?" I was like, "Well, I just got to get up earlier." So I get up super early. I mountain bike. From there, I can go over to the gym and train with my jiu-jitsu guys at M1 Combat Academy. We're lucky here. We have a Green Beret who's also a black belt under the Hoist Gracie lineage. And so we're pretty lucky there. And dude's a solid guy, Jeff Cook. And so we go to train with him. He has a very good combatives focus, SOC P guy. So he's very into that stuff. But yeah, jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing, mountain biking, trail running, sandbags, and kettlebells. That's my fitness routine. And it's every day. Every day, just because I think if we take, like today actually was a recovery day just because of that mountain bike handlebar fun ride yesterday. So today I did hot and cold plunging, push-ups, sit-ups, just the little things so that the body knows that I'm still here. And it also it pays tribute to the body, right? We have this machine that moves well. It's a gift from the Almighty, so might as well treat it right and be well with it. So I encourage everybody to do something to keep the blood flowing.
That's awesome, brother. You piqued my interest regarding your instructor being an SF guy. I'm one of the coaches at my gym in the mornings, and half the guys are all third group guys, just great So and
they
you
might
mentioned
know him. He's a third group guy.
And that's what I was going to ask you, if he was third group. So my coach, Lee King, that's why I'm thinking that maybe your instructor, did he get his through through Greg Thompson possibly? Because that's the Hoist and Greg Thompson SOC P guy. I don't know if you know him.
No, he got his through Crouch here at the MMA lab. Okay. But Jeff Cook, he might know your guys, and they might know each other. So
that's a familiar name to me. as
Yeah.
well. Cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, Aaron, I think probably getting close to your favorite question.
Yeah. Well, this is the most important question of the show. And that is, what are your 3 favorite bands and or musicians?
I told Eric, I really like this question because I'm jamming out to music all the time. There's
Awesome.
always something different playing, but there's always the consistent songs that are like they have their history and they have their like almost like their own power level
Oh yeah.
that they can bring you to life with. So my all-time favorite band, and it's kind of a weird one. Most people are like, "Oh, really? That would be your choice?" Is Monster Magnet.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, see, I knew I'd get one of you guys to say that. So Monster Magnet, and my favorite song from those guys is Crop Circle. Crop Circle by Monster Magnet. That's my jam. It's an older song, but something about Monster Magnet was rocking for me when all of my friends were like Megadeth, Slayer, Pantera. I was a Monster Magnet. That was my jam. So Monster Magnet, Crop Circle. Check that one out. Metallica, The Memory Remains.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
another one. That's
Metallica's my band.
yeah.
Yep.
So Metallica is my number 2, with The Memory Remains being my favorite song of theirs off the Reload album. And then we'll spin genres and go to rap. 50 Cent is one of my go-to rap guys, and it's the older stuff, right? So the song I'm Supposed to Die Tonight, I play that when I'm like in a funk and I'm like, okay, this is the jam. This is the beat is steady. It's slow. It's like dark and grindy. And that's another one that gets me through like a hard workout. So those 3 songs, those 3 bands, those are my top 3 go to. Has anybody asked you guys what your 3 are? Because I want to know.
Well, we've talked about it on here, but Aaron, we'll go that direction. Go ahead, Aaron.
Sure. Well, so my favorite rock band is the Foo Fighters. I think they're the greatest rock band to ever live. Seriously, I know that's hyperbole. But then next would be, from an artist standpoint, a guy named Paul Gilbert, who is the guitar player of multiple bands, but he really came about in the band Mr. Big. And then, let's see here. I do have a hard time thinking this through, but I'll tell you what, here's another. When I'm cranking up, heavier rock music, I still then turn over to Brad Paisley and crank some country. I am an Okie, so actually I never really liked country until Brad Paisley. So I'd say that those are my top 3 right now.
Nice.
So
Eric?
So, we always say 3, but sometimes we have folks come on and say, man, I don't think I can just stop at 3. So I'm going to kind of break the rule too. So I'm just going to say like my all-time favorite bands. And then I'm going to say also what I will also listen to a lot right now. So Metallica is my all-time favorite band. It's one of the biggest reasons why Aaron and I are musicians is Metallica. I went through a stage of absolutely crazy over Pantera. I probably saw Pantera in concert like 5 times, I think. It just an amazing kind of time in my life where I was learning who I was. Pantera was a big part of that. And Primus, because the drummer in me, Tim Alexander, who we mentioned off recording, is my biggest drumming influence. So I have to say those 3 bands. Now, what do I listen to a lot if I don't want to listen to anything hardcore? I wouldn't even call those hardcore, to be honest. I love Coldplay. My wife loves Coldplay. We've shared some really good memories, one of them being one of their concerts a while back. So, sometimes I'll hit random on that. And I also like Chris Stapleton a lot now too. So I got many more, but I'll just stick with those for right now.
Right on. That Brad Paisley "Gone Fishing" song was probably my favorite song by Brad Paisley.
Oh, that's a great
That's
song.
excellent.
He's got all kinds of whimsical lyrics
Yeah.
and again, I don't really listen much to other country, although it doesn't bug me. Like, I mean, it used to bug me, but Brad has enough of a pop sensibility, and he is a monster guitar player.
Oh yeah.
I'm talking about ridiculous. And the fact that he can play guitar so well, and I would rather have someone be a great songwriter than a great singer or even a great guitar player. I care more about songs than even guitar, even though I'm really into guitar. Hence why, I mean, Dave Grohl's not that great of a singer, but man, I think he writes the coolest rock songs. So I listen to a lot of different stuff too. I mean, lately I've been listening to a band called Big Wreck. That's really a kick-ass band, and I've needed a break from rock music lately. And man, I've been hitting my old Tori Amos and Sarah McLachlan records quite a bit. I went through a phase where I didn't listen to anything unless it was a female singer and there was piano in the music. So went through some odd stages, I guess.
I think I remember that stage, and I was cranking up Pantera, I think, during the same time.
Just to counter it.
Man, I'll quote and one of our other musicians that we had on, a guy named Jason Beeler, that's another guy that I listen to a lot, just incredible songwriter, guitar player, and singer. He said, there are two kinds of music: good music and the other kind. So, so I live by that philosophy too, and I'd never heard it put that way, and I stole that for sure.
Do you guys remember Dragon Force?
Yes,
vaguely.
I do. You said that, and my brain went through a little bit of calculations, and then I remembered. Weren't they like a real like shred guitar band, but with like Japanese guys or something like that?
Yeah, it was like a Japanese American team.
That's right.
And they were just shredding like ballads on guitars, like wild guitar play, man. I was like, these guys are impressive if you want to just tune into some good guitaring. And then Buckethead. You guys remember Buckethead?
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Geez, dude. The person you like to look at and so, dude, that's a serial killer that plays guitar. He doesn't talk. Dude, just
he got the KFC
bucket on his head. I think he's about 6'5",
super long curly blonde hair,
and then dude with that freaky mask on, and dude, just he's an alien for sure on guitar. Yeah, good example there too. Yeah, his guitars too. Interesting thing about his guitars are even extra long scale.
Mm-hmm.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I can't remember what his scale. I think it's 27-inch scale. I think, which is a couple inches longer than your standard, like one of these guitars I've got back here, either 25 and a half to 25. So yeah, pretty serious. So put some tension on those strings for sure. Yeah, man, bringing up cool stuff. Yeah, we love music, and it's so awesome. I did want to say this. I didn't want to skip over this. You did something, going along with the uniqueness of how you're putting your material out, how you approach it during your classes. I think you may be the first guest to answer their favorite band and their favorite song simultaneously with that band. That was cool, dude.
Yeah, rock and roll, literally.
Yes.
Like, the band question intrigued me, and I was like, I like that. And I was like, well, why? I was gonna venture to guess you guys were gonna hit me with favorite songs too, so I had to be prepared, and so I was ready for it. But those are I don't know if you wrote them down or you go back and listen to what songs they are. If you give them a listen, there's a reason why, and all of them they're good lyrics. And I mean, obviously, you guys know yeah, there they are. They're just good music.
Yeah,
man.
Some of them I am well aware of, but it's been a long time, so I will be checking them out, and I'll give you a text at some point after I give them a listen.
And the point is, and it's cool, a guy like you that most people would never want to run into and have to tangle with, that you also get excited and emotional about music. That's why we're musicians, is because the first time I'll tell you, when I decided I wanted to be a guitar player, is the bridge in Battery by Metallica. It's literally just 2 chords, but there's such a growl and intensity of the guitar sound that it's like, when I heard that, I was like, dude, that is the coolest fucking thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And just makes you just go, dang, dude, this is life. You feel the life in this and what it brings out of you. And so that's why, man, yeah, that's why this is one of our questions, because it brings up this kind of stuff.
I bring a little speaker with me, and we'll throw music on while we're drilling, and I'll jack it up and I'll bring it down, just kind of like how we do in training at the gyms, right? But I'll do that outdoors, and there's something special about a good tune and good drilling. And I like music that much, so I'll bring it to a class and we'll jam out to it. So.
Rock on.
In the future, I am pumped, though. When you guys launch your stuff, keep me posted. I'd love to come out and see what you guys are doing as well.
We will reciprocate.
Yeah, I know you guys are the hosts and you guys don't get a lot of questions back, but yeah, I'm excited to learn more about your guys' programs, and I'm sure you'll put information out there, and you'll have my full support. Thank
you very much, buddy. That means a lot. Very humbled for that support you're shooting our way, buddy. Very, very much appreciated. Well, Raul, this has been awesome. I knew it was going to be fun, and I'll just mention this on the air. We usually send our guests outlines, and the fact is it's just a baseline. And yes, we talked subjects, but really, man, it was just a flow. And again, I always think about after we have shows is that typically that's the way it goes. We got some topics we want to talk about, but then it flows into something so much bigger, such a much more awesome conversation than you might think on paper. If that makes sense. I'm just basically saying it's like, man, it was, I expected it to be good, but man, it was awesome, buddy. Thank you. Appreciate you giving us your time, and we're going to have you back on again much sooner than 2 or 3 years.
And before we do let you go, make sure everybody knows how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so rogue-methods.com is our main page on the internet, and then at rogue.methods for Instagram, and then my personal page is Raul.Martinez Jr. on Instagram, Facebook as well. I'm super responsive. If anybody sends questions, I answer them. And I do everything, so be patient as I say all that. So it's still a one-man show as far as the company goes. I answer all the emails. I do all the email letters. I answer all the DMs. But yeah, if you need anything from me, you guys as well, reach out. We're here for it. This is what we do.
Thanks, brother. And I will put all of your information in the show notes as well for folks listening.
Yeah.
So, well, cool. Well, Raul, you have a blessed evening. We will talk soon, brother. Excellent hanging out with you.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Take it easy, guys.